Well, hello, my different browsers of the Maverick Nation. Brothers and guys of the Maverick Nation. I'm actually Maverick, and this will be part 2 of What If Izuku Was Lucy. I think I'm gonna love this one. Basically, where we left off, part 1. It would be the declaration that Izuku would make that him and Lucy both will become great heroes. Because truly he would never be alone. He would never be without his friend Lucy. Well, basically this would be technically considered Lucy Jr., because Lucy Sr. is Lucy from Elfen Lied. So I guess now that we got that out of the way, boy. Basically now, after the whole Sludgeville incident and everything, basically really wouldn't do all much, like 10 months of training. It wouldn't be all that important. We would skip all the way to the first day of UA, and you would know which class to go to. Class 1A. Find the door, see that it was massive. Well, one thing that would immediately take up most of the class's attention is that the door would seem to open on itself, and then Izuku would walk in. Like, literally, it seemed as if he didn't even have his hand on the doorknob. And that's because he didn't. One of his vectors was opening the door for him. However, at the level his vectors are right now, they are invisible to the human eye. Now, Izuku is half that clone eye because of what happened with him and Lucy Jr. Basically, Izuku being half that clone eye, which would mean he would be able to see the vectors. He'd be able to, basically use. And, well, Izuku would basically just be like, okay, just sit somewhere in the back and hope nobody notices you. Like, this Izuku, guys, this Izuku is hardcore. Like, he's not trying to be friends with everyone. He's not exactly trying to not be friends with anyone. Like, he's just his own level of not really giving a shit. He's just too hardcore for this friggin' school to handle. Like, for frickin' Rey Mysterio's theme song. Too much damage for one to manage. Izuku is just that hardcore. Eventually get to the point to where Aizawa would wake up from his little sleeping bag, and he'd be like, if you're here to make friends, then I suggest you leave. Oh, and we're going to be doing a quirk assessment test. And basically, you'd be like, if you're gonna make friends, I suggest you leave. And, well, basically, for those of you, like, basically after he says all that, basically, these gym uniforms, changing rooms, and then, meet me at the training field. Quirk assessment test. And so, all that would happen. And, well, the only girl who'd actually be able to get a look at Izuku's bod, well, would be giggling like a little schoolgirl. And Izuku would be like, huh? Lucy? And Lucy would just be like, hiya. Yes, Lucy follows. She has come back. Since it's gonna be Izuku's first day, she wants to be there for him for his first day. And technically, since she's pretty much invisible to everyone else, just like all of the Vectors are, nobody knows that she's in the men's changing room with Izuku. And everyone just thinks Izuku is talking to himself. And, well, Izuku just gave off the same excuse like, well, this class is already turning out to be so boring, I guess, talking to myself would be a better thing than, this class in general. It's like, I find this class so boring that I'm just talking to myself. And, Bakugo's thinking, something's going on. Mizuku with that weird quirk of his, and then all of a sudden he's talking, what did he say, Lucy? Does he have, some sort of invisible girlfriend? It's one of Hagakure's relatives? Toro Hagakure, relatives, stripping in the class? And basically, this would get him freaking smacked by Hagakure, who was just go all the way over there, break the fourth wall in order to smack Bakugo across the face. Really use the power of breaking the fourth wall just to do that. So, yeah. Basically, seeing as you got the highest score, well... Wait, I didn't even do the entrance exam then, did I? Shit, run me back. Huh. Well, I guess I totally screwed the pooch out on that one. But you guys all know that, Izuku would actually just use the vectors to tear the robots to pieces. Literally, literal Lego sculptures that you just pick apart the pieces, and at the seams. So, literally just like Legos. Just tear them apart slowly and painfully. So, yeah, I guess I just speed pass, through the exam. And, well, for the written portion, I think that Izuku would be fine with the written portion. And so, basically, and, well, you basically, it all happened here you go, you got the highest score at the entrance exam, and, well, so you throw first. And Izuku would just be like, okay. Just like, and be like, but instead of that, that would more or less be the motion of the vector. Izuku would actually be pulling a Mewtwo, and he'd be like, and he would just open it, and then all of a sudden, pew! Like, freaking me, pew! Like the freaking Roadrunner. And a Coyote. Like, it would just literally pull a Mewtwo, like, hands like this. Like, bam! Just, that, Jesus, mother of God!
Sorry.
Jesus.
These are brand new headphones. Do you want a pair? Is it great you might need them?
Sure.
Got you a pair too. Love you.
Okay, love you too.
Here, let me that. I can't believe you're on YouTube with all that eye boogers. Alright, Sarah and I run into the store. We'll be right back.
Okay. I hope you and Sarah have a fun time at the store. Anyways. It would basically just be like Mewtwo. Like. And the vector would just, like. Basically. You know, the vector would just shoot it off as soon as he did the Mewtwo thing. And it would hit infinity. And actually, the screen would slowly crack a little. And I thought it would be like, what the? Okay. Hold on one second. I'm going to need a little bit of a repairman. As Aizawa gets his little phone screen fixed. And then they can resume the thing. And basically, you know, Bakugo's just like, how Deku? How'd you do it? How did you become so freaking strong? Like, first you're grabbing me and breaking me, and now you can just, like, shoot it off like it's Pong or Quidditch or something. And, you know, Izuku would just be like, first of all, it's funny you compare my vectors to Quidditch matches. What they just did there. It's funny you compare that to a Quidditch match. Like, they would literally know what Quidditch is. However, it's quite different, indeed. There's a lot of focus involved. And, oh boy. Can it get messy at times. Basically, that's how that would happen. And, well, as for all the other tests, well, pick and choose which ones you think, like, the vectors would actually help with. However, I will indeed admit that he would get nowhere near last place. However, still, I will admit that it was all just a logical ruse in order for them to try their hardest. You know, Aizawa would begin to feel something brush past him. That being Lucy's hand, as she's, like, Lucy Jr. is not exactly tall enough to get to Aizawa's throat. She's trying to strangle him, because she's really pissed. She thought that was going to be the end for them. Like, for a while there, because they weren't always getting the top score. But, you know, it wasn't like they were, like, the bottom of the barrel. And so, you know, just, like, lying to them like that, basically, Izuku would be like, come on, Lucy. And Lucy would just be like, well, I guess, well, what do we do now? And Izuku would just be like, well, today marks the end of the first day of, you know, UA. And, well, as days would flip by, basically, you would get the whole mock battles. It would be Izuku and Lucy would just be in the background. Not even in the foreground this time, just be in the background, watching to see who he would be paired up with. Izuku would indeed this time be paired up with, oh dear God, I don't know. Uh, oh my goodness gracious. Basically, well, Hagakure. Why Hagakure? Well, mm, you guess. Because uh, my own reasons for what I do, sometimes they even trouble me in my mind. They're my own reasons. They're the reasons I come up with. That's how you know I'm a troubled soul. Basically, Bakugo, well, I'm willing to say that Bakugo would be partnered up with Kirishima, constantly calling him Baku Bro. So, yeah. Hmm. How exactly this would work out? Kirishima would indeed be guarding the bomb. Hagakure, as long as she stayed careful, she could basically make it to where Kirishima wouldn't be able to see her, and she'd be able to sneak up on the bomb straight behind him. Almost like she was about to, like, slash your villain kill, like, shank ya, but, like, right behind him. So basically, that's the strategy that Hagakure decided to go with. Try to look as invisible as possible. You know, basically, you know, try to look as invisible as possible. Just sneak up and not even, you know, not even have to do with any like sort of physical confrontation. And you know, wouldn't even have to deal with anything from Kirishima. So yeah. And that actually is, funny enough, basically what ends up happening. However, right before it would happen, there would be a clash. Bakugo with his explosions, and Izuku, you know, he would just pack himself a punch You know, however, he would have a single vector wrapped around his hand. And the vector would be powerful enough to increase his punch by like tenfold. And so it would be like equal to Bakugo's explosion punch. And so they would basically create like a freaking singularity at the same time that Hagakure won in the battle for the heroes. However, this singularity that's been formed is now like starting to tear apart the building that they're in. And like a bunch of other vectors come and they kind of unwind the singularity, because if it's a vector like cause part of the singularity to form, like a bunch of vectors should like help unwind it and thus undo it. Basically, Bakugo would be like, what the hell? And, you know, Izuku at this time would finally reveal that as of recent, he has now acquired the status of half dicloni. You know, this quirk kind of has to do with like the fact that he's half dicloni. These eyes, how his eyes have changed, that's also something to do with half dicloni. Yeah, well, what about those things on top of your head? They look like extra ears, but the deeper I look, they actually, are those horns? And then Izuku would basically just see a shard of glass from how the building was getting torn up. And, you know, he would look at, like, the reflective side of the glass and be like, huh? He had no idea that he was actually getting horns. That's because, well, the way he was combing his hair was a little bit different this day. He was combing it outwards, so the horns kind of got their own little chance to like shine and show. Like, basically, I guess that's just another trait, like another trait of the dicloni. Horns that at first glance kind of look like little ears. But no, indeed, these are horns. Yeah. Yep, they're indeed horns. And like freaking Bakugo's like, what even is a dicloni? And like, you're half of it? So like, how'd you become half all of a sudden? And like, was this have something to do with like some sort of experiments? And he's like, well, actually, I just think it's more or less this one girl who was like also part dicloni herself transferred her life force, like the last of it, inside of me, turning me half dicloni. Because she was half dicloni. We were a perfect match, basically. Both half human, half dicloni. Well, basically, we were both half human. The dicloni part was just added in because, you know, basically, you know, I guess, like, Izuku would just be like, I guess I never noticed because I never combed my hair a certain way before. And I guess now that I have, I can finally see that they've developed these horns. Dicloni horns. And Bakugo would be like, so these dicloni, they have horns and can control it like invisible independences that you call vectors. And he's like, yep. Mm-hmm. Pretty much. And the dicloni are aliens. And Bakugo's like, he's just like, Aliens? Okay, that's it. I raised the white flag, and it would just be the Canadian flag. For some reason, I would pop the Canadian flag. I mean, it's part white, part red, so it kind of makes some sense. Basically, he would just hold out the Canadian flag whenever he said, "I hold the white flag." He would just be really honestly creeped out to hell that, this kid who he used to bully is now basically freaking part alien. And, he doesn't even know how strong, his powers can get. And, well, so Bakugo just decides not to be as much of a D-bag anymore to Izuku. And notice I said to Izuku. About everybody else, that's fair game. And, well, Izuku would decide that he likes having his hair, brushed in this certain type of way because now everyone can notice the difference. The little extra difference. The detail that shows his heritage more than probably anything else. The horns. The frickin' Dicloni horns. And so, yeah. Basically, that shit. Potatoes. Basically, what we have left is the USJ, basically. And also, a little something that Izuku decides to tell Bakugo at the very end is that the vectors he was using, to stop the singularity, well, unlike with, All Might, those were just simple level 2, because, the normal ones are, level 1, and then the ones that hit All Might were, level 2, and the ones that were used to stop the singularity, and even the one that was used to create the singularity, were level 3 vectors. And Izuku's like, you probably don't want to know about level 4, because that's whenever I have noticed it gets a little freaky. But the way he would say a little, and his facial expression, you could tell he was kind of trying to say a lot without actually saying a lot. Jesus Christ! What the hell? Dad, you just scared me and all. Dad, you don't have to do that. I already have the Mountain Dew. No? What exactly is it? Snickers. Thank you. Oh, wait, what? Peanut
brownie.
Peanut brownie. Thank you. Love you. Oh my god, I freaking love this show. Basically, the whole thing. Yeah, Izuku is trained with all of his levels now, up to level 4. Izuku's pretty sure from all the talks he's had with Lucy, Lucy Jr., that he can probably actually go to higher levels. Now, it will do even more damage. But, as soon as he heard the part about nuclear fusion, he was like, okay, I think for a good amount of time, unless I've been, proven wrong, I think nuclear fusion level freaking vectors, that's a good place to stop. So, yeah, level 4. Unless I'm ever, proven wrong, and then, maybe, maybe, just maybe. And Lucy Jr. would indeed understand. Because nuclear fusion is not something you want to mess with, kids. However, this one day, I saw basically is like, we're going to the USJ, get on the bus, freaking whatever. And who would be sitting next to Izuku but Hagakure? Yes, I'm having the invisible freaking girl lady be the ship for once. You guys got a problem with that? You can haul your asses to another one of my videos, or just another video in general. Ain't gonna hurt my feelings. Basically, they get off the bus, and they get into the USJ. 13 does her whole spiel. And I saw even, assist her with it. Explaining everything. And about what they're going to be doing. That's whenever Izuku would realize, wait, I can sense your presence stronger than ever now. You're really wanting to help me, aren't you? But I don't think I'll ever need to use level 4. No, I don't really think that I'd ever need to. And Lucy's like, oh, trust me. What I'm sensing coming through those portal-shaped thingies, basically looking at a bunch of, portals forming, and sensing one of those portals in particular has something really nasty of a surprise in it. And it's coming out right now. Basically, the Shigaraki Kurogiri, all the fodderized little villains, and there is the Nomu. Basically, not just any Nomu, the high-end Nomu. And basically, the Nomu would basically do everything that it did in canon. And however, whenever All Might comes to, fight off the Nomu, some very shady shit goes about. Shigaraki, he doesn't want their toy to be destroyed. And it looks like All might have a chance of doing that if, he's given too much of a advantage. And they've already teleported off most of the kids, so the only other advantage that he could give his little toy is if he basically did to, All Might what he did to Aizawa. Or at least attempted to do. And so Shigaraki's basically like, Kurogiri, let's play it dirty. And Kurogiri would be like, oh indeed, Master Shigaraki. Oh indeed. And so basically that's exactly what Shigaraki would do. He would literally decide to play dirty. And well, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. The Nomu now has total, like the high-end Nomu now has a total advantage over All Might. Because he just got, like, fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Like Shigaraki just pulled that shit. And so now, basically, the Nomu's about to end All Might. And that's whenever Izuku is just like, enough! And then he's just like, Lucy, level 4. And Lucy's like, I'm glad you see it my way. Just was like, now. Basically, now finally the vectors are actually visible. Like, everybody can see what they've been missing out on. All these freaking appendages. And they just go up it straight up into the sky, all the way up into space. And they form into one huge ass vector. And the huge ass vector, well, first of all, basically, Lucy would also become visible, and she would make herself a distraction for the Nomu. And basically, the Nomu would be distracted, basically putting down All Might. And, that would be just enough time for Lucy to come in clutch, catch All Might, bring him over to somebody who could, like, help. And, well, Lucy would just be like, now! And Izuku's like, let's do this! You made a big mistake in doing this, Shigaraki. You're going to pay! Maybe even with your life! Huh? Ah! You say your high-end Nomu is powerful enough, strong enough to defeat All Might, to kill All Might. Well, this powerful, mighty fist blow of vector power is strong enough to be comparable to nuclear fusion. And the moment Shigaraki hears that, he's like, okay, Gary, get us out of here. Basically, it would just be like, wait, did that kid just literally say what I think he just said? And Kirigiri would be like, yes, Master, yes he did. And Shirogiri would be like, Kirigiri, we need to leave. No more not. We need to leave. And basically, they freaking warp gated out of there. However, the Nomu is at least dealt with, like the high-end Nomu. And all of the fodder bad guys, they're pretty much, like, no longer existed. Because, like, a bunch of smaller, like, frickin', like, vectors would have, scooped up all of the students and, like, everyone else who was, like, injured, like, scooped them up out of harm's way, except for, the villains. And then it would just be like, touchdown! Eureka! Mother trucker. And, well, basically, whenever the whole blast you, like, radius or whatever, whenever everything was all cleared up, seeing as pretty much anyone who was there literally just heard that the whole giant fist thing, the actual impact, like, power, is supposed to be comparable to nuclear fusion, and kids, don't act like you don't know about, like, anything nuclear, anything having to do with nuclear is probably going to be a bad. Especially something like nuclear fusion. So, yeah. Basically, everybody would be glad that the other vectors were there to basically scoop them over to safety. But, everybody would be worried, where's Izuku? And, Hagakure would be like, Izuku! He sacrificed himself to save us. No, I can't. And basically, Hagakure would have one hand over like this to make sure that none of the radiation stuff got into her mouth, nose, eyes wise. But she would just be using the surroundings around her as a way to find Izuku in the middle of all the wreckage. And Hagakure would indeed find Izuku and use that one last arm to pick him up and hoist him out of there. Barely able to get out of herself because she wasn't exactly protected with a hazmat suit or anything. So yeah, she's pretty much close to death as well because she went straight into a freaking yield thing of nuclear fusion energy thing, and that's a no-no, a big freaking no-no. And well, basically, Izuku would just wake up and he'd be like, "Holy shit! Did she actually go in there to get me? Damn! What do I do?" And Lucy's just like, "You could always transfer some of my power over to her to, make a connection, and well, give her the invulnerability that you have, and basically like a shared connection." And Lucy Jr. would be like, "Yeah, but only with her and me and you, no one else. Is that understood, mister?" And he was like, "Yes, Mom." And Lucy Jr. would be like, "Shut up, big brother." And well, Izuku's just like, "Well, let's do this." Basically, put his hand right here, on her body, and just transfer some sort of link over to her, and she would gain the invulnerability because she would gain this invulnerability shield of vector energy. This is literally how Izuku's powers are developing. He's able to create new shit off the fly. And well, now basically Hagakure is invulnerable to Izuku's actual the after effects of anything level 4 and above. So yeah, and also level 4 and below, because well technically there are weaker attacks than level 4. So she would also kind of be invulnerable to those. So basically, Izuku would have given. He would have basically given Hagakure a vulnerability to the effects of his vectors. The effects of his vectors on people. Yeah, so. Holy shit. Wasn't that some freaking shit? Damn. Anyways, I'm Ziana Dawson's Construction Maverick is OUT out of here. Yeah, boys. Favorite, subscribe, some comment section, and I'm a bounce.